Hi guys, hi everyone. So this is my third video on my chakras, more than just battery banks, that they're actually initiators of the human consciousness or our human evolution. And I really want to, if you're new to this channel and you haven't watched the root and the sacral, I would recommend that you do that. I kind of go into why I started this. But the root chakra, I believe it's number 31 in my videos, and that is all is one. The sacral is number 32 video, and that is honoring one another initiation. And I kind of go into, just going to give you a brief overview of why I'm doing this, is that for the longest time, I've been kind of at a stalemate. Like I really haven't been following a lot of people on YouTube lately because I feel like they're just kind of talking about the same stuff over and over again. And I felt like there was more to all of this. So then I started to delve into Rudolf Steiner's work on esoteric science and anthroposophy. And that kind of, it's starting, the more and more I delve into it, the more and more I'm getting answers for my questions that I wasn't getting off of any other teacher. So if this resonates with you, by all means, jump right in. If it doesn't, it's okay. Leave it at the door. It's all right. It may not resonate with you. That's totally fine. But in anthroposophy, they talk about what they call a black sun and a white sun. And through the white sun, there's these 7 rays. And these 7 rays represent wisdom and the level of consciousness. And they, interestingly enough, they actually give these rays colors. And the root is the red, the orange is sacral. You know, it correlates with our chakra system. So that kind of started me down this rabbit hole. And when I read that, and I was like, wow, interesting. And that's when this is why I've taken off and kind of going down the rabbit hole of initiations. And then you have Rudolf Steiner, who talks about the 7 stages of initiations. We actually go through a lot more initiations, but anyway, so that made me start questioning things. And now I'm starting to see, when the more and more I go into these chakra initiations, the more and more I see why I did certain things in my life. And I'm hoping that by doing these videos, it also shows you what you've been doing in your life, like why you've been doing them in your life. So I asked Spirit, I said to Spirit, I said, what is this about the solar plexus? Can you give me some information on it? And what Spirit came through, I said, the solar plexus has many uses. Its main function is protect soul's consciousness. The solar plexus initiation is a different process than the root or sacral initiations. The solar plexus initiation involves an understanding of the soul's, quote, reflection in the mirror. The soul's reflection is hard to see until the soul understands that what it is seeing is a mirror of what lies underneath. And at first I struggled with that. I had a hard time with that. I was like, whoa, what do you mean by this, Spirit? And then I realized, what is our solar plexus? Our solar plexus is the fire. That is honor oneself. When Caroline Myss talks about honoring oneself, that's our value, how we value ourselves. And how many times have you told people that you reflect outward what you feel inward about yourself, you know, your value as a person? So all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I got it. So then, and Caroline Myss also states, blooming internally, empowered, shifts a person's center of gravity from external to internal, a mark of spiritual passage. I was like, wow, cool, very, very fascinating. And she goes on, I want to actually read the excerpt from Anatomy of the Spirit because I want to do it justice. I want to give Caroline Myss full credit. She goes on to say that the power created by these 4 archetypal forces transmits into our systems the sacred truth of honor oneself. All 4 of the archetypal forces at this level direct us to develop self-esteem and self-respect. The chakra contains our, quote, survival intuition, our sense that protects us when we are in physical danger and alerts us to the negative energies and actions of other people. We violate this energy when we disregard our gut instincts. How many times have we turned around and been like, oh, your gut, you just know you should do something this way, but you do it this way anyway, and you're just like, and it goes kaplooey, and you're like, blows up on your face, and you're like, oh my God, I knew I should listen to my gut instinct. Ugh. You could go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories about why is it that so many people have gut issues. I don't know about you, I was one of them. I had gut problems, stomach issues, and I do believe a lot of it has to do with these energy drinks and this artificial sugar and stuff like that. But what is so important about our guts? It's where our soul's main protection is. So if we destroy the gut, does it destroy our gut instinct? I think it does, but that's my take on it. That may not resonate with you, but that's my thoughts. Anyway, going back to Caroline Myss. So she talks about confirmation, and in the Catholic religion at a certain age, people they have what's called confirmation. It's kind of like a passage of young adult to adult, if you will. But our soul actually goes through a form of confirmation in itself. And she says, part of the process of becoming conscious of ourselves is, quote, an initiation, experience, or a coming of age ceremony. The spirit requires such an experience or ceremony as a marker for emergence into adulthood. When this marker is absent, a conscious or unconscious negative impression or void manifests itself in psychological weaknesses. Some of these manifestations are a continual need for the approval of other people. I don't know about you, but for the longest time, that was my thing. I needed constant approval of others. And part of that was I go talk about this in a previous video, was that it was a form of love for me. But it was also because I didn't have the fire in my solar plexus. Basically what she goes on to say is, by having this continual need for the approval of others, it gives us unhealthy identifications, and that's where you see people getting in with the wrong crowd of people, because they are seeking someone else's approval. And that's why we go into, hang out with people that we know are bad for us, and we just get, but we're trying to identify with someone, right? Inability to appreciate oneself, an inability to develop a healthy sense of oneself as an individual, again, valuing ourselves. The ability to glean intuitive guidance from one's own spirit rests on a strong sense of self and on respect for that self. So she goes on to say that when we lack self-respect, our relationships with others are temporary and fragile states of intimacy. We continually fear abandonment because the terror of being alone drives our actions. To confirm oneself, to consciously develop and acknowledge a personal code of honor is crucial to the creation of a healthy body. So she goes on to say that when this power is not within us, when we focus on what is missing from life, or when we see life as empty and meaningless and need to learn to accept our personal responsibility for having created it, part of that is the victim card. We don't take responsibility, right? We don't want to. And we just don't find meaning for life. That's because there's no fire burning within. How many people that are depressed that you know, and they'll say to you, I don't have any meaning in life. That's because the fire is gone. They don't have it. It's not ignited. So when I sat with Spirit and I asked Spirit to give me more information, like show me more, Spirit took me back as a child. And I saw myself as a little girl. And I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 by the looks of it, is what I saw. And Spirit says, liken it being when you were a child and could not speak up for yourself. You were, quote, shut down by members of your family. Your soul could not ignite its fire. And I remember, how many of you guys had parents who just shut us down? Or had family, yeah, whatever, and you couldn't speak your truth. You couldn't no matter how hard you tried, you just couldn't, nobody would listen to you, right? Your soul tried several times, but it already was in the shadow archetype known as the lost. So basically, I knew I had a purpose, right? All of you watching this video know you have a purpose, but the purpose I'm talking about was just basically the overall human sense of purpose. I didn't have it. I was in the shadow type of lost. And when I asked Spirit what would be the light aspect of it, that's when it said the purpose. So I was like, oh, got it. Your soul had a difficult time because it had formed an attachment to wanting to please others. And that's what I said. That was one of the reasons, that's one of the ways that I found I equated with love. But it's also because of my solar plexus. I didn't have the fire. So when I sat with Spirit and I said, okay, when did I get this fire? When did this happen? Like, did I pass my solar plexus initiation? And Spirit was like, yes. And it showed me a situation that happened about 3 years ago. And I was a travel nurse at the time, and I accepted this contract in Washington State. And it was, I had started when you're a contract nurse, basically you contract to earn X amount of dollars during a 13-week period. And I had started my orientation, went through the first week with the hospital. I went through the second week, and all of a sudden they were, oh, hello, cat. All of a sudden they come through and they say, we're cutting your pay. And we were all like, wait, but we have contracts with you. And they said, well, we're giving you, the option. You have X amount of hours to decide whether you want to stay here or not. But this is what we're doing. And the pay was substantial. It was $500 a week they were taking away from us. So for me, that was $2,000. And I was like, wow. I had already had these plans for X dollar amount by the time my contract was done. And now I was losing, so basically 3 weeks for $6,000. And that was a big deal. But I ended up staying because I was like, well, by the time I get a license in another state and I go through the orientation process, blah, 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 I might as well just stay. It's better than nothing at this point, right? So what Spirit then showed me was me driving and my recruiter, a conversation I had with my recruiter. And we were coming up to I think it was like 10 weeks or so had passed, and she was asking me, did I want to renew again with the hospital? And I said, yeah, I'll renew again. I love the girls I worked with. I love the hospital. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I said to her, on the one condition, I want my contract rewritten for the amount that I was initially was supposed to get on my first contract. And my recruiter gave me a really hard time. She's like, they're not going to do it. They're not going to. And I said, fine, I'm not going to do it. I walk away. And my recruiter was really pushy. She really wasn't working for me. Let's put it that way. And I just remember standing my ground and saying, no, I'm not doing it. They want me. They're going to do this dollar amount, period. I have nothing to lose, right? So she ended up, I don't remember all of it, but she submitted it with the dollar amount, or I don't even know what she did actually. And she said to me, oh, they didn't approve it. It was like a day or two later, I think she said. She left me a message saying they didn't approve it. And I got back on the phone and I said, really? I said, it didn't approve it? It took us 2 weeks to get the last approval, and you're telling me this in like a day or 2 days, whatever it was. So she was lying to me. So I was standing my ground. I knew she was lying to me. She didn't want to submit it with that dollar amount. So she ended up going on vacation, and I got this other agent, this other recruiter, and I told her the situation. I said, I'm not taking this contract unless it's this dollar amount. And she said, okay, fine. So she submitted it with the original contract price. She calls me up, and I'm driving in Nevada. I'll never forget it. That's what Spirit was showing me. And she calls me up and she says, you got it. I said, what? She's like, you got it. I said, I got the contract? She's like, yeah. She said, and I said, well, what was the amount? And she said, they agreed to your full amount from the previous contract. All of a sudden, I can't begin to tell you guys, I just knew something bigger than me had just happened. I felt the energy shift. I felt something happen. And I was like exhilarated. I was like on cloud 9. You know, I didn't know what it was. Now, after going through all of this, all of this, I now understand what it was. It was the universe. That I was like flying high for like an hour. And the reason for that was because the universe was, I had stood up. I understood the value of myself. I understood it. And my recruiter, he was fighting me, giving me argument after argument. I stood my ground. And how many times do we allow others to roll over us, right? So that was when I passed, I had passed littler baby steps. Like I can literally tell you guys every time in my life, looking back at having somebody, I could just see all these little initiations, whether I passed them or didn't pass them, because then I had to repeat them over again. But I felt that shift of energy. And what I now understand, what Spirit showed me, was basically the universe, the exhilaration I felt, was I thought it was finally, I did it, so to speak, but the exhilaration was multiplied because what Spirit showed me was all of these beings, like literally the universe, was clapping their hands for me. And that was when I passed that initiation. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, oh my God, makes so much sense. Boom, right? So, what happens when one doesn't? When we get these little baby steps of initiations and we don't pass them, what happens to us? What happens, right? So I was questioning that. So in Caroline Myss's other book, The Creation of Health, she talks about what happens. And some of you guys are going to be able to relate to this. I'm not going to read this all to you guys, but I'm going to give you some of her examples. So what happens when we don't light the fire within us, or get our solar plexus? When we have a lack of personal power, because that's what our solar plexus is, right? Our personal power. So when we don't pass these initiations and we continue to stay in the mode of lack of personal power, this is what she says happens. Fear of intimidation, which prevents you from establishing relationships or situations that are based upon equality. I'm guilty. How many times in your life can you trace back these periods of initiation when you had that moment where you could have turned around and changed a relationship? You were intimidated, didn't feel your value or personal power. Me. The fear of assuming responsibility for yourself, your needs, your commitments, your finances, your thoughts, attitudes, and personal actions. Now this one wasn't as much for me because I grew up in a family that was, you took responsibility for your actions. Like there was no going past that. So that one didn't really resonate too loudly with me, but it may resonate with some of you. Resentment over having to take responsibility for another who is either emotionally incapable or refuses to take responsibility for himself or herself. The resentment is increased when a person feels incapable of challenging the irresponsible partner and thus remains in an untenable situation through the negative choice not to challenge it. And actually, as I'm reading this, I'm getting, what Spirit's showing me is that I had a big stage of initiation that I missed. I didn't pass it. And this had to do with my mother, and I was in high school at the time. And my mother went through this period of victim where she did a lot for attention. She wanted attention from everyone. And I saw right through it. But I allowed her to continue with what she was doing. I didn't challenge her. I didn't stand up to her. I let it go. And what happened, I'm in my marriage, because I didn't pass that initiation, it had to come forward again for me to revisit it and allow me the opportunity to pass it again. And what Spirit just showed me as I read this passage was, they showed me in that state when I was high school, when I failed that initiation. It resurfaced itself again as a lesson with my ex-husband. My ex-husband didn't work since 2003. So I was in almost the same situation of this person playing victim, and I had to pick up their pieces. But I passed that initiation. It took me 6 years when I finally said enough is enough, and I handed in papers. But the reason why I had to experience that again was because I didn't learn it. I didn't pass that baby step initiation, if you will, back when I was in high school. And that's why it resurfaced itself again in my adult life. So I think if you look back on your life, you're going to see this, guys. It's going to make clear so much of what you've experienced and the reason for it, okay? So I'm doing these videos. All of a sudden, for me, it shows me clearly the path I chose, why things happened. It gives me the answers. Let's see here. Where else does she talk about? Let's see. Fear of being criticized or the need to criticize others in order to feel empowered. You know, I hated being criticized. I didn't want to be criticized. The fear of being or the need to criticize others in order to feel empowered. How many times have we worked with someone, a boss, a fellow employee, where they belittle the heck out of everyone that's below them or they're equal? You know, they got to sit there and belittle them, and that's their way of being empowered because they don't have the fire, the power, the power. They feel powerlessness in themselves. They don't have the fire of their solar plexus, right? And I have to say, I'm guilty too, you know, of that empowerment. You know, and I look back and I remember working with this coworker. Oh, she was a bitch. Oh, I'll be straight up with you guys. And she would play games with people. And I'm an older nurse, and I was working on the floor of younger nurses. And I saw how she was belittling them. And finally, I just stood up and I said, you know, you have to stop this shit, you know? And again, I felt something shift, but this is going back like maybe 6 years ago when I didn't understand any of this. But I did feel a shift that happened in that moment. She continued. Of course, she continued. But I had passed that stage of initiation. So I've never worked with another person where they belittled me. So I passed that initiation. I didn't have another person belittling me because I stood in my power. Okay? See how this works? Now you start to see it and you're like, oh, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. You know, that's why when you go to a job and you have someone that belittles you and makes you feel disempowered, and then you stand in your power and you say, enough. And then all of a sudden, you go through years without meeting someone else. That same personality. It's because you passed the lesson, guys. Let's see. Anger, frustration, which result from the inability to break free from being controlled by the expectation of others. Yes, I see that. I see that so clearly in my life. The pattern of taking anger out on safe and helpless victims because of lacking enough personal courage to challenge the source of one's anger. How many times do we do that, guys? We do that all the time. But the minute you stop doing it and you acknowledge it, you pass that initiation and you go on, and that's gone. That's done, right? Oh, God. It's just, my light bulb goes right off. I'm just like, wow, shit, all this makes sense. So much sense. You know, I asked Spirit, I said, okay, Spirit, is there any last messages for this video? And it was beautiful, guys. This was last night. I was sitting in my room and just asking Spirit, what do you want to say for me to close this video off with? And all of a sudden, I felt, it was almost like my room was on a dimmer switch with the universe. Because at first it started out slowly. I felt like this little sense of warmth. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger until I felt like this expansion of warmth all around me. And what I saw was basically this warmth was the universe, right? There were so many beings. I was blown away. There was all these beings. I knew that I could sense there was beings all around me. But what they were showing me was the warmth. It mimicked our solar plexus. How do you start the fire? How do you start a fire? A little ember, right? We start an ember or a match. And we light, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it expands outward and outward, right? And that's what I was feeling. That's what all these beings were showing me. That was why that feeling of warmth was gradual and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the love. Oh my gosh, guys, I wish, if you haven't felt the love of Spirit or the love of the universe, it's magnificent. It's beautiful. So beautiful. You don't have an idea. You never ever walk this path alone, guys. There are times on this journey you will feel more lonely than you have ever felt in your life. But we are never alone. We're never alone, and we are so loved. It's beautiful. I just can't tell you enough. So what came through from Spirit was the solar plexus initiation is hard. The reality of your planet and attachment to asking for help is something that most humans have a difficult time with. The universe wants each and every being to pass its initiation. And then it was like, I felt kind of like this very like loving knowledge, like a knowledgeable energy comes through, like very like, you know when you have a teacher and you admire that teacher, you've had one teacher in your life where you just admire them. That's what came through, was this kind of energy. And it goes on to say the universe is always a request away. And that's so important for us to remember that. The universe is always a request away. They are here to help guide us. You know, I struggled with this video. I'm like, oh God, I couldn't get to flow. I couldn't do it. And then I was just like, Spirit, I just gotta hand it to you. what do you want me to say in this video? And right now I feel like there's all of a sudden it's just flowing, and I'm just like, I hope it's flowing for you guys, it's flowing for me. But anyway, there's so much more I want to say, but you know, I struggled at first, guys, honestly. This is like my 5th time doing this video. And then I just gave it over to Spirit and said, here, take the reins. I take it. And anyway, but, you know, when you start looking at things from a different perspective, at least for me, I see every step of why I chose to do something, why I chose the path I chose, why things kept coming back to me, because I had to pass these initiations. Now that I understand, as I look at things as an initiation process, all of a sudden it makes more sense to me. My life is making more sense. If this video has helped you guys, hit the like button for me, help me push this out to others, hit the subscribe if you want more of my videos. I always leave my email for contact information. You're never alone in all of this. If I don't have the information, I will try to direct you to someone who I think might help you. Also, I was sitting the other day and Spirit came through and wants me to do something with you guys. And I'm really excited over this, because what Spirit wants me to do is start doing an archetype card draw. And basically what I'm doing is Spirit wants us to start learning more about ourselves, about the patternings of human nature. Because I have a feeling we're going to have to start seeing through these patterns to understand what's happening in the bigger picture of why people are doing things the way they're doing it. So what Spirit's showing me is a simple little exercise using archetype cards and getting us to become aware of the archetypes in our world, and also how these archetypes could even be in us, you know, for that week. So I'm very excited about this. I'm going to start the first card this Sunday. And it's going to be for the week of 1/6 to 1/13, and this is a card for the collective energies. What's the archetype for the collective energies for this week, for that time frame for that week? And then hopefully we can start to see more patterns and more understanding of what's going on in our world. I think that's the whole purpose of what Spirit wants this to be. So I'm curious to see what direction that takes. And yeah, I'm very excited for the new year, guys. I think it's going to be a hold on tight. We're on for a roller coaster ride, but yeah, let's do it. So have a great day, everybody. And yeah, till next time. Bye.